This isn't necessarily a life lesson video, but more so me wanting to talk about a specific episode of the show that, I believe, does something unique. So, what is there to say about the hit series? For some, it was their first exposure to Thomas and Friends, the nostalgic beginnings of what would forever be their fascination/addiction to the franchise. For others, it was a continuation of the series we either saw released on TV or watched endlessly on VHS tapes and DVDs. A continuation that would slowly cause us to drift away from the Little Blue Tank engine for reasons we couldn't exactly explain why, but as we got older, the picture became that much clearer. I myself am heavily nostalgic for the hit series. I remember catching it every morning before school. But that doesn't mean to say I like looking back on the series. At least not to the degree of Series 1 to 7, and even Magic Railroad to some extent. As mentioned in my Series 7 review, this was the era where the company Hit Entertainment bought the rights to Thomas and Friends from Ghislaine Entertainment in 2003. Hit wanted to reintroduce the show to the public with a different target audience in mind. The audience in question? Toddlers. As a result, the show became simplified. The cast of characters was heavily abridged, childish, gimmick-of-the-week locations started to be used in their stories more often, and the stories themselves, from a writing standpoint, got worse. 'Twas the beginning of the phrase I'm sure every Thomas fan has had bashed into their heads at some point in their lives, the Three Strikes formula. The predictable, cliched story writing in almost every Hit series episode. An engine is given a job by the Fat Controller. They make a mistake 3 times. The third mistake, they are reprimanded for causing confusion and delay, and they realise the error of their ways. They make up for it in a quick montage that fixes everything. Everyone is happy, and the main engine is called or feels like a really useful engine. That little bow tie at the end of the episode made to feel like we've been on some kind of journey, when in reality we've just seen them fuck up over and over before getting their common sense back, with how ridiculous the accidents could get. Not helping was the new 7-minute runtime as opposed to 4.5 minutes, stretching each of the 3 mistakes out across the story before resolving everything in the last minute or 2 of the episode very quickly. Which resulted in poor pacing and making the stories themselves feel less like a kid-friendly but dignified story that you'd see in the Railway series, and more like one of those one-and-done baby books that you see for sale in book aisles in shopping centres. You know the ones I'm on about. Not every Hit-era episode followed this formula. Hell, some of their model series episodes had different storytelling methods before things got lazier and they switched to CGI, but it was used a lot. Which, that's not to say that the classic series was completely free from overused formulas. You could argue the most common story formula in that era was the one where an engine is rude or boastful to another engine, they have an accident or make a fool of themselves and learn their lesson as the engine they were rude to saves the day. That was a very common trope for the classic series, but each episode with this story formula was different enough with the characters' unique personalities, unique dynamics with each other, and the much shorter runtime making them snappy and watchable without being dragged out. Here, it's almost the same copy and paste dialogue with just different engines as the main leads with one-dimensional character traits, if any at all. And I stress again, because this type of story is so common throughout all 5 of the Hit series, 9 if you want to count the CGI series where it was nothing but this repeated story layout, it makes this era, whether you decide to watch just one episode or binge the entire series for something like, I don't know, a review, feel like a chore to sit through without clicking off the video with how repetitive and lazy they can be. However, I believe while the 3 strikes formula may be overused, that's not to say it can't work. When used correctly, this formula can lead to some very great episodes, even for this era of the show. Case in point, the subject of today's video is what I believe to be the best example of the 3 strikes formula in Thomas and Friends: Percy and the oil painting. Percy and the Oil Painting is the first episode of Series 9 of Thomas and Friends. As this was the era far from being contracted to only adapting Railway series stories, it was an original story written by Abby Grant, a co-writer from the Jack in the Pack 2-part episodes in Series 6, and a long-time writer for the hit model series. It was produced by Simon Spencer, composed by Robert Hartshorn, and directed by Steve Asquith, who also comes from the classic series team, with credits to his name going as far back as Series 1, I'm not kidding. The episode was first released in the UK on September 2nd, 2005, with narration by Michael Angelis, and about 2 days later in the US on September 4th, with narration by Michael Brandon. It was also the first episode of the show to have the title read aloud by the narrator, which would become a permanent staple for the entire series moving forward.
Percy and the oil painting.
Did you guys know that this episode and the second episode of Series 9, Thomas and the Rainbow, came out before the extended special Calling All Engines, which is supposed to have taken place between Series 8 and Series 9? Christ, thinking back on 2004, Hit would have been in the post-production process of Series 8, rushing the US dub of Series 7 to be released alongside Series 8, and beginning production on Calling All Engines on top of Series 9. 2004 must have been one hell of an exhausting year for these guys. But I digress. I actually don't have much to say about the production design of this episode. As per being filmed on widescreen lenses, the sets for the valley and beach are indeed big, but come at a cost of wide open spaces with not much in them. It doesn't really look like a railway, but more like a basic countryside and sandy beach setup with railway lines just dropped onto them without much thought. Familiar locations like Tidmouth, Brendam Docks and Knapford are nice to see, but those flat new locations stick out like irritable thumbs. Hartshorn's music is nice to listen to. While I don't think his incidental pieces are as good as Mike and Junior's from the classic era, the reused motif of Percy's theme in this episode is at the very least upbeat and relaxing. I also prefer the UK dub of the narration to the US dub, big surprise there, but for one very standout reason in this episode's case. I do prefer Angelis's snooty and unimpressed voice for the famous artist. He sounds like a perfectionist who came to the island looking for muse for his artwork and is just immediately unimpressed by everything he sees.
Too green, he said. I want you to show me somewhere special.
Completely disregarding how nice it looks. What a dick. Brandon, on the other hand, tries something a little bit different and instead opts for a loud French accent.
Too green, he said. I want you to show me somewhere special.
Which clashes with how the artist is supposed to be portrayed in this episode, I think. Like we went from a funny and entertaining stereotype to a stereotype. That's about the best way I can describe it. But of course, this is all just to talk about the production, as Percy and the oil painting is elevated by its story. So the plot of this episode is that the Mayor of Sodor has invited a famous artist to the island to paint a picture called The Spirit of Sodor. The Fat Controller chooses Percy to collect the artist and show him the different sites of Sodor for inspiration. Percy is unsure of himself at first, but with encouragement from his best friend Thomas, saying that nobody knows or loves the island better than him, though I beg to differ, Percy sets out to Brendam Docks to pick up the artist. I love how Gordon is also there at the sheds when Percy is given the job, but he doesn't belittle him, saying he's not the best engine for the job, and instead just smiles. This would have taken place after the Series 8 episode Gordon Takes Charge, where Gordon teaches Percy how to pull passenger trains on the main line while showing off, has an accident as a result of showing off, and ends up with respect for Percy at the end of the day. So it's like he's looking at Percy feeling proud, like he's taught him well, knowing that he's the right engine for the job today. That's wholesome. So once Percy picks up the artist from the docks, he takes him to Shen Valley. But to his surprise, the artist isn't impressed, saying it's too green, and asks him to show him somewhere else. So Percy takes him to Norranby Beach instead. But the artist then says it's too yellow, asking to be taken somewhere else again. The more places he gets taken to, the more snooty and disappointed he becomes. The viaduct he says is too tall, and the windmill he says is too round. Finally, Percy takes him to Knapford Station. But even this isn't enough to impress the artist, saying it's too busy, and that he believes that there is nothing special about Sodor. So, if we were to separate this into the 3 strikes formula, obviously the first strike is going to Shen Valley, the second strike is going to Norranby Beach, and the third strike is going to Knapford. 4 if you include the short visits to the viaduct and the windmill. So why does the nature of the 3 strikes formula work here as opposed to so many other attempts in the series? It's actually for one simple reason. It is intentionally repetitive to show how annoying the artist is. Each strike has a reason for being there to keep building and building the artist as an arsehole. What also helps to drive this point across is that for this episode, Percy is 100% in character. It is no secret that Percy's character started to crumble from Series 6 onward. I swear, anytime I mention that series, I close my eyes and I'm reminded of Percy and the Haunted Mine.
Naughty gnomes! Cried Percy.
He still had a couple of moments where he was mostly in character, but up until this episode, especially in Series 8, he had his off moments. In Percy and the Oil Painting, however, he's written true to his friendly, loyal, but also very bluntly honest personality. Percy is actually Abby Grant's favourite character, so it makes sense that he'd be written in character for this episode. After he takes the artist to Shen Valley, only for him to turn it down, he's surprised at first, but he knows how important the artist is and doesn't want to disagree with him. So when he takes the artist to the beach and he turns it down as well, he feels more upset because he's made 2 mistakes in a row, doubting himself even more as he tries again. It's only when he takes him to the viaduct and the windmill, when the artist is still unimpressed, that he, and by extension us, the audience, start to think, okay, he's being a bit ridiculous now. It all reaches a boiling point when they get to Knapford, and the artist dares to say that nothing on Sodor is special. Percy is fed up and furious, with Gordon nearby witnessing just how rude the artist is being. Percy gave up his time to show the artist all the wonderful things to see on Sodor, only to have it spat back in his face being told none of it is special. Had this been a regular hit episode, Percy would just feel like he's let the island down and then take the artist to a last minute location which would conveniently turn out to be the Spirit of Sodor. But no, Percy is sure of himself that anywhere on Sodor is special and won't stand for any more of this crap.
Everywhere on Sodor is special, and so are the people and the children and the engines. We are all special.
He lets off steam angrily, which blows the artist's hat off. Then the artist says he wants to see the Fat Controller immediately. Now Percy's done it. He's thinking he's let his anger get the better of him, and now he's offended someone very important. Now he's in trouble. Except, not really. What's the most predictable way this episode could possibly end? Perhaps Percy does get into trouble. The Fat Controller tells Percy off for causing confusion and delay. Percy says sorry and then tries again to show the artist the Spirit of Sodor. That would be a completely unjustified ending because all that time spent building up the artist as a perfectionist snob would have amounted to nothing had he been proved to be in the right all along. What would the moral be? That it's okay for people to say bad things about where you live because they're important and you're not? That would be really toxic. But that's the greatness of Percy and the Oil Painting. It does something different. When the Fat Controller comes out of his office to see what's the matter, we think we're about to see him rant at Percy, only for the artist to say he's found the perfect thing to paint.
I am going to paint Percy, said the famous artist.
Which I guess maybe you can argue is like saying the real Spirit of Sodor was in you all along, you know, that kind of cliche ending. But I don't think it is. There's a different moral here. It's that when you know someone is being rude and disrespectful towards something you care a great deal about, you should take a stand no matter how important they claim to be. Which is exactly why the artist picks Percy to paint.
Percy is honest, hard-working and helpful. And he is not afraid to speak his mind. He is surely the Spirit of Sodor.
So the artist paints a picture of Percy at Knapford, although I'm highly curious as to how the Fat Controller feels about one of his station platforms being blocked by an engine being painted. This is Knapford Station after all, one of the busiest stations on the island. All trains going to that platform were cancelled, I suppose.
We want our money back, they shouted.
Soon comes the night of the unveiling and everyone sees the painting of Percy for the first time, with Percy being proud to be the Spirit of Sodor. This time, the bow tie everyone is happy ending feels earned, because we went through the repetition of the artist rejecting to paint different parts of Sodor before finally reaching a conclusive decision that is both sweet and has everyone in character. And it wouldn't have been possible had it not been for the use of the 3 strikes formula. So kudos to you, Abby Grant. You already had other really great episodes like Edward the Great and It's Good to Be Gordon. But with Percy and the oil painting, you took an overused formula in this era of the show and made a story that I believe is on par with the classic series. I don't necessarily enjoy everything that you've written, Percy and the Magic Carpet, but I am happy with what you did for episodes like this one. I truly am. For certainty, Percy and the oil painting is a cut above the rest. I want to take this time to plug a project started by fellow YouTuber Play Don't Pause Writer's Pen. Throughout this year until September 15th, you will be able to vote for your favourite Thomas & Friends content creators in the Steamies Awards. Think of it like the Oscars, only with Thomas content. There's a variety of different categories you can vote for, ranging from Best Original Story, Adaptations, Model Work, Video Essays, the works really. You can either vote right now or wait until some new stuff comes out this year from your favourite content creators before the deadline. More information will be provided via his announcement trailer, which I recommend that you give that trailer a watch to see the type of content specifically he's looking for. Yours truly even had one of his videos appear in the trailer as an example of video essays, which that really warmed my heart to see that, it really did. Link to the trailer will be in the description. That'll be all for now, so have a good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're watching this, and I'll see you in a bit.